failures are not failures. The things that don't go well, you absolutely learn stuff. You take advantage of a context while it's ripe, like selling retail food product to individuals, right? If your neighborhood changes around you, then you have to shift, and it doesn't mean closing it down or stopping Foodworks. Okay, what are we going to do next? So I think that was a mindset shift that I wanted to make sure people knew about what I personally would define as success for our social enterprises.
Greetings. I'm Michael Murr, the Executive Director with CSED, the Center for Social Enterprise Development. We're a connector and capacity builder that champions social enterprise as a way to create stronger, more caring, and more sustainable communities. Social enterprises, in case you've not come across that term, are businesses and business activities that are being done for a community and social purpose. The goal of the podcast series is to explore how organizations are developing, launching, and growing successful social enterprises. And it's our hope that through these conversations, aspiring social entrepreneurs and existing social enterprise leaders will be able to gain advice, inspiration, and knowledge that they can then take back into their own operation. I'd like to thank the City of Ottawa for its financial support of our podcast series. Welcome to the CSED podcast series. Our focus today is Operation Come Home. Operation Come Home is an Ottawa charity that serves as a center for homeless and at-risk youth ages 16 to 29. They're dedicated to providing employment, education, and support services, and all through the lens of the youth themselves in terms of fostering personal growth at that individual level. Interesting tidbit, they were founded in 1971, and they have consistently been a champion of social enterprise. So we're delighted to have with us today John Heckbert, who is the Executive Director of Operation Come Home. And John, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
How are you doing today?
Not bad, not bad. It's been a good day, a busy one. As we work in homelessness, obviously, and so today and yesterday evening was the first major snowfall in Ottawa this year, and that always makes it an interesting morning. The following, yeah, people are in a bit of rough shape, but it was okay. We're getting there.
Okay, so you made it through. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so every day we have a drop-in program that runs 7 days a week out of Operation Come Home, and this morning we were very busy. There's a lot more youth than usual because, of course, having somewhere warm to go first thing in the morning, super important on mornings like this.
Of
So,
course.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
John, I'm really excited to be having this conversation. As mentioned, Operation Come Home has just been consistently interested in social enterprise as a vehicle for magnifying impact. But before we get into social enterprise, I'm just curious. Can you tell us about yourself and how did you come to be at Operation Come Home?
Yeah. So, interesting. I always worked in the nonprofit sector. When I graduated with my philosophy degree, I think 25, 30 years ago, from University of Waterloo. And then after that, I did economics. But graduating from philosophy, there was nobody that was really hiring philosophers. So I ended up working in fundraising as my first job. I was fundraising for our university, and then contemporary art organization, and then environment, and then eventually social services. And so that was my working life. The social enterprise aspect of what Operation Come Home does was very meaningful. Previously, like when I had worked at other organizations, working in fundraising, it's challenging because you're relying on the generosity of other people. And that generosity is contingent on how well people are doing financially, their goodwill, other causes. You can have a great relationship with a donor, but then things change if somebody in their family gets ill or their priorities shift. Happens all the time. It's very natural. But that, for me, wasn't uh, as reliable a way as there could have been to secure impact. When you want to make a difference as a nonprofit, it's helpful to have other diversified, sustainable sources of revenue that are tied to your impact agenda that aren't contingent upon the generosity of other people. Hence, social enterprise. So, when I was at United Way prior to coming to Operation Come Home, this is 5 years ago, I was a volunteer with Operation Come Home. And Elspeth, my predecessor in the executive director role, who you know very well,
This is Elspeth McKay.
that's the one. Yeah. We had lots of conversations, and I was on the Operation Come Home board for a while talking about social enterprise. And I thought that aspect of what Operation Come Home does is outstanding. You can provide employment to young people who earnestly need it. You can help them advance towards their life goals. You can make revenue to offset your operating costs at the same time. Like the whole picture was fantastic. So that was kind of the main motivator for me, not just to be interested in it, but to come over as the executive director.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so social enterprise really being at this opportunity, and so social enterprise, as I understand, really began in sort of the 2008 period with BottleWorks. Is that right?
I think it was 2007 or 2008
Okay.
for sure. And BottleWorks at that time was, yeah, the first one. They were experimenting with a lot of things. It was a bottle recycling service, but also I think they were doing home delivery of of things that people purchased for a while, working with Bo's Brewery and others. And yeah, and that was the first one, and then grew to Foodworks and then Housing Works. I think that actually, when you're in the social enterprise mindset, you have to be a serial entrepreneur. And so, others may feel differently, but I think that, the organization had tried and started and then grew and then closed social enterprises that fit their time and place but aren't with us now through Operation Come Home. There was a Farm Works project where youth were growing food. There was a Beadworks project where youth were making jewelry. There was a retail store called the Restore that was run by the organization. Like, these are all successes in my view. Those organizations don't exist anymore, but you keep adapting your approach to fit your context. And so yeah, so there's been, I think, 7 or 8 total social enterprises at Operation Come Home since the first one in
Mhm.
2007.
That's really interesting. That I agree that most people, I would say, if they hear that you've stopped a social enterprise, they don't see it as a success,
Yeah.
and yet you're saying that in fact it's okay. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the outcomes are still there. When we were running a retail store, youth were making stuff and selling it. And some of them I know because they stay in touch with us have gone on to great careers doing things in the creative field, working in retail, moving on in their, store managers, whatever. So, like, you look at the outcome, the impact agenda of Operation Come Home, and it was absolutely there throughout. And so the business, doesn't need necessarily be like, I mean, of course, you're talking about running a retail store. Like, the retail landscape absolutely has changed in the last 10 years. So I don't think there's any shame in admitting that you've opened and closed one, or that you've shifted your strategy to adapt to market conditions. The big one for us now actually is because, I mean, the main reason that we operate social enterprises is work integrated social enterprises. We try to make sure that we provide employment opportunity to youth. And so we're taking a lot of inspiration from academic research and some papers that were published by people working in generative AI with Microsoft, actually, to look at the careers that are least likely to be disrupted by technology in the next 10 years.
Mhm.
And those are the places where we're channeling our social enterprise creativity.
Okay.
How do we create and scale businesses that are in those fields?
And what are they saying? What are those fields?
Well, so a lot of them actually, I mean, not surprisingly, they're in trades and hands-on work. I think one of the top scoring professions for resistance to technological disruption, if you want to call it that way, or the lower likelihood of being replaced by automation or AI, was roofing, for example, right?
Mhm.
Like, of course, there's industries like that, but high-end customer retail was another one, because and event planning as a
Okay.
substitute of that, because you could see how, in a high-end retail context, human connections matter,
Mhm.
sales ability matters, and so those are the kinds of things that kind of hit a sweet spot for us, where we can work with our young people, not all of whom will have gone to post-secondary, and channel their interests and their learning and their growth into fields that are less likely to face disruption. So yeah, and so I think that,
Okay.
yeah, and the point being is that, those strategies that we're using now aren't going to be the same ones as they are 15 years from now. So I think that there's a context and a time and place for everything.
Okay, and so maybe paint a picture of the typical journey that a youth that comes to Operation Come Home, and once they learn that there is an ability to move into a social enterprising role,
Mhm.
describe what that journey looks like for the typical youth.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's very rapid, and sometimes it can take a longer period of time. So, like I said, we have a drop-in program that runs 7 days a week. It's in the mornings and the evenings, where we provide hot meals and clothing and shoes and personal care products and a bunch of other things to youth who are in the homelessness system. And so, um, often they're living in shelter or they're staying in church programs. Some of them are couch surfing. A few Not the majority, but several are sleeping outdoors, right? I believe that everybody has the right to work, that everybody can contribute, and it doesn't matter what your personal circumstances are. It doesn't matter what your health status is. Everybody can contribute and should, and it's a part of our culture and a part of human dignity that everyone should be able to have that opportunity. And so, yeah, sometimes a young person might be in the shelter system, and just in their first week of coming to Operation Come Home, we've just met them, and they're interested in starting with a social enterprise. They want to work in Foodworks, they want to make a bit extra money in BottleWorks or whatever, Houseworks, and so we can bring them on into those organizations right away. You know,
Okay.
and the team is tough. We, as a work integrated social enterprise, we try to strike that balance where we're providing supportive services that help them learn how to conduct themselves in a job and learn like some routines and structures so that they can be successful in those jobs. But at the same time, we want to provide a realistic work environment where we do have really concrete expectations for their output and we hold them to those
Hmm.
expectations. And that's a balancing act. Sometimes it's a gradual process to bring somebody along, where they start at a certain level, and then by the time that they're moving on to private sector employment, they've achieved a higher level of stability or output or whatever. So yeah, but that's always the way. Everybody who comes to Operation Come Home, if they've been coming for a week or 3 years or anything in between, we'll try to get them on in the team if they're interested.
Okay. And how many youth have been involved in the social enterprise programs over the years?
Well, it's really hard to estimate because we've had businesses come and go, different roles. It's more than 1,000, but being more specific than that is hard to say. Last year was 51 individual youth were employed in our social enterprises,
Okay.
which actually makes us a pretty big youth employer, right? Like, and we've had moments where we've had many young people on staff because of the different enterprises that we were engaged in. And that's not including sort of the more contract-based work that we provide. Like, for example, it's seasonal, but we do mural projects all across the city, and we have some of our youth who are interested in the arts and creative fields join us to learn how to do street art and murals, and they paint them in places where there's a lot of graffiti and a lot of tagging, and so we're helping do some civic restoration in those
Okay.
places, right? So yeah, so it's definitely a very large cohort of young people that have been through the
Hmm.
social enterprise uh, social enterprises, I guess, at Operation Come Home.
And so a youth that maybe explores Foodworks
Yeah.
and food preparation, catering,
Yeah.
they can then move to a different um, social enterprise.
Yeah, and often they do,
Yeah.
if it's a poor fit. One thing that surprised me, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, yeah, January of last year, we launched a new social enterprise that was like for apartment turnovers. You and I worked on this together. Talking about the strategy and the business planning of it, was that we wanted them to do cleaning services, do painting services, light repair. We wanted to do that in apartments because our organization, holistically, we wanted to create greater relationships to the landlord community, which was helpful to uncover new sources of housing for our youth, right? Get them into apartments. And so I thought youth would not be interested in that job because I was like, with teenagers and young adults, like not stereotype, but
Yeah.
who among them would put their hand up to do apartment cleaning, right? Like probably, parents would say that they don't see that a lot in their children. But as it turns out, that was extremely popular, right? Because they could put on their headphones and just go for it, and they didn't have to, there wasn't a huge social component that they needed to interact with, and they really enjoyed those jobs. Um, and so we'll look for fit like that. Like sometimes, obviously, we have youth that are very extroverted, very socially skilled,
Mhm.
right? And, they might say they want to put on their headphones and work, but we're like, oh, you have so much potential in an outward facing, client facing kind of environment. So we'll try to channel, like, you never want to tell them what to do, but you kind of try to help them see the skills that they might not see in themselves sometimes.
Mhm.
So they might start in one and then move to another. It's a better fit for sure.
You touched on it earlier, but that balance, I guess, between the supporting the needs of the youth
Hmm.
with the need to run a successful business in terms
Yeah.
of making sure that you do have the right ingredients in place. Talk a little bit more about that balance.
Well, I mean, that's it's tough. I think, in terms of our social enterprises, BottleWorks, which is our bottle recycling organization, is the only organization that's been fully financially self-sufficient. right? And so, and part of the reason that's there is in that state is because there's a very strong focus among the BottleWorks team on meeting the needs of our condo owners and our bars and our restaurants and the households that participate in that program.
And this is where BottleWorks will come to their door and pick up
Exactly.
bottles.
Yep,
Okay.
empty alcohol containers, and we'd
Okay.
bring them back to the beer store for the deposit.
Okay.
And those deposit revenues, which we frame as donations, and we give businesses tax receipts and all that, because we can as a charity do that. Yeah, those bottle donations produce enough revenue to cover the operating costs of the program.
Okay.
So the maintenance, the fuel, the salaries,
Yeah.
the administration. Um, and that's the only one. The other social enterprises up until now have been in part reliant on grants to cover their bottom lines, right? Like we get grants to expand the program, to address equipment or capital challenges, to try and explore new markets, new opportunities. And so, yeah, we will regularly and routinely apply for different forms of grant funding or donor support to be able to
Mhm.
achieve those objectives. But I mean, thankfully, in taking Foodworks as an example, our catering organization, I think that the grant requirement of that is, yeah, maybe 20%, 25% of the total annual budget. The rest of it
Okay.
is catering sales that carry that business, right? So even then, it's not like we're not relying on that philanthropy to be able to do the impact,
Mhm.
but it absolutely helps address where maybe in some cases private investment or other, like in a private sector context,
Yeah.
there'd be some other way of fulfilling those needs in a business for sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about Foodworks in terms of its clientele? What's involved?
Yeah, so yeah, Foodworks, it's fascinating in a way. I don't know if like it's got some momentum behind it because it's been going, I think, since 2017. It might have been
Yeah.
started earlier, but as far as I know, and this is before I was involved with the organization, so hard to say exactly. But it's been through some evolution, but it is a full service from scratch catering shop that provides catering support for corporate events, weddings, private functions,
Okay.
all kinds, all across the city. But food businesses are hard. Food businesses in the catering space are very hard because our competition in the landscape in Ottawa was 2,200 businesses last we looked. Because if you're running a business meeting downtown, every restaurant can cater your event.
Yeah.
There are some bespoke caterers that can fulfill what we do. There's lots of different options that you have to meet your food needs in that meeting, and so it is challenging to get out there. In those situations, I mean, we have to lead with the impact. People buy from
Mhm.
Foodworks primarily because they know the cause behind it.
Mm.
The fact that we have, I think, what is excellent food is also helpful. You can't stay in business if you did a bad job there,
Right.
but that's not the primary motivator for somebody to try us out for the first time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you get the word out? How do organizations, individuals,
I was just
how do they
talking about
find
this in
you?
the last meeting that I'm in. The one thing that we don't do a great job of is investing in marketing and promotional work.
Okay.
Um, and partly it's because uh, that hasn't been my area of expertise or that of our staff, right? Like, I mean, and we have volunteers and board members that help supplement that. But yeah, if you give us some extra money, our first thought isn't to market and grow the business; it's to pay the youth more and to do the cause aspect side of things. So I think that's a work in progress in terms of getting better. We do social media advertising and digital advertising. We do reach out to past customers, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of like creative expanded, that's definitely an opportunity for growth for Foodworks in the future, is to try and blow out that side of it, because I do think there's some untapped potential there with the marketing that we could do, but we're not
Mhm.
currently. Yeah.
You have Foodworks has a presence on Gladstone,
Hmm.
and how long have you been? Has it been there?
Yeah, we've been in that commercial kitchen. I think it was 2021 or 2020. We took over the lease of that space and then renewed it, obviously, more recently. It's kind of neat because the commercial kitchen we have on Gladstone, we don't need all of that the footprint that we have. We don't need it all to run our catering organization. We have a walk-in fridge and a walk-in freezer and quite a lot of the equipment you'd need. Obviously, everything from baking to cooking to grilling to whatever. And even then, we'd had a surplus of square footage. And so, I mean, previously we tried out a retail business,
Okay.
which is going fine. But then, of course, not a supermarket, but not a bodega, somewhere in between, opened
Okay.
up across the street. Like a mid-sized grocery store opened up across the street, and so we weren't as able as we had been the year previously to do like direct retail food product sales.
Okay. Because you had more of a captive market, I guess,
Well,
prior
yeah,
to.
just the foot traffic in the neighborhood didn't have that before.
Mhm.
So we could sell things like prepared soups and frozen foods, and we were doing that with our extra space. And then of course the grocery store goes in the across the street, and we're like, okay, that's more challenging now because
Mhm.
they have bakery facilities, they have a bunch of other things that we just didn't have. And so what instead we pivoted to was operating as an incubator kitchen. And so we're renting out some of that space
Okay.
to other social purpose organizations that want to start their own food businesses.
Mhm.
That actually has been amazing because what we're seeing now is that there's potential. I think there's three individuals that are running and booking space, working with us in that Gladstone kitchen who want to grow their own food businesses. As their businesses take off, maybe they're going to take some of our youth with them, and that is success in
Mhm.
my mind, right? Is that if we can
Mhm.
grow into their careers and they can achieve that kind of employment as well. So there's a real synergy there too, which is helpful. And that, I mean, that comes out of the, as we were talking about earlier, the willingness to pivot, to close things down when they're not working,
Yeah.
to rethink, to look at your assets as your assets, right? They're not an
Mhm.
encumbrance or a problem, but it's like an opportunity to be filled kind of
Mhm.
thing. So yeah.
That sense of I almost had this sense of experimentation,
Yeah.
right? And you said that you're not afraid of it, right? So is it, where does that come from? I guess that comfort level.
Well, I mean, I think I think part of it's just a comfort with risk, and you do have to be out front with these things a little bit. Like I think that when I first started to work more closely with our board of directors, you have to tell people that that's your mindset. Like, we're gonna try out some things. Not that any of the board ever took me to task for anything that didn't go well, but I wanted to make sure that they knew that
Mhm.
our failures are not failures.
Mhm.
The things that don't go well, you absolutely learn stuff. You take advantage of a context while it's ripe, like selling retail
Yeah.
food product to individuals, right? If your neighborhood changes around you, then you have to shift. And it doesn't mean closing it down or stopping Foodworks. Okay, what are we going to do next? So I think that was a mindset shift that I wanted to make sure people knew about what I
Mhm.
personally would define as success for our social
Okay.
enterprises.
So almost expectations, setting, just being clear in terms
Yeah.
of really the guardrails around social enterprise.
Yeah.
The From a governance perspective, how is Operation Come Home organized? So you have a board of directors, and do you have a committee then that?
Yeah, well, yeah, the governance aspect is one of the things I think is more interesting than not for profits that I talk to, because we had a bit of freedom around that as well, a little bit of innovation, let's say, which I think is quite nice. Is that how do I put it? We have the Operation Come Home, the mothership, which is the charity that's headquartered at 150 Gloucester Street, and we that's where we engage with most of our youth. There's 752 young people that come to us on average every year or so. And um, we also have separately incorporated legal businesses that are distinct from Operation Come Home. So Operation Come Home operates under its own charitable number, but Foodworks is separately incorporated. Housing Works, which I mentioned was doing the turnovers and the unit cleaning and stuff like that, that's also separately incorporated.
Yeah.
And so we have these different legal entities which help, in a certain sense, isolate risk to the organization, but they're also helpful for insurance reasons. And, sometimes you can wear different hats, like if there's a grant for small businesses and for
Mhm.
profit businesses are invited to apply, Foodworks can qualify for those.
And that's right. I was just going to jump in, so that Foodworks is incorporated as a for-profit,
Yeah, that's right. Owned by Operation Come Home.
owned by Operation Come Home as a charity.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's 100 shares in Foodworks, and those are operated by or owned by the mothership,
Hmm.
Operation Come Home proper. And then we have another separately incorporated charity that's adjunct to Operation Come Home, the
Okay.
Operation Come Home Foundation, which oversees scholarships for our youth to pursue post-secondary. Yeah, I mean different ways of yeah, separating your risks, your tracking, your impact. Mostly the motivator to do the separate incorporation is insurance. It's
Okay.
very challenging for an insurer to look at all the things that are going on
Mm.
under the main building, and then add a food business on top of that, and then ask them to price an insurance policy for the whole organization. Like, there's no off the shelf product for that. So,
Okay.
so it's easier if you separate things out for them, for sure.
Okay. Is there when we think about business plans, and so as you're experimenting, you're seeing opportunity in the market.
Mhm.
How do you go about developing business plans? How do you vet a prospective opportunity?
Yeah, so I do think that there's the best thing you can do is take a very formalized approach to your business planning, right? So you can engage a consulting organization like CSED. Now, I know that it's possibly not the case that CSED thinks of itself primarily as a consulting organization, but there's definitely that role that it can fulfill to help you create a well thought out business plan, and to do it at arm's length. If I was just writing a plan for a social enterprise by myself, there's so much motivated reasoning that happens that it wouldn't be a useful document, because you fall in love a little bit with your own
Mm-hmm.
ideas when you're enthusiastic about them in the beginning, and even though you're trying to be scrupulous about thinking them through carefully, you're open to some biases and maybe blind to a couple risks. And so having a separate uh, group or person that can help you through that process is essential in my view. And I mean, of course, there's expertise that I absolutely do not have in terms of assessing a market or setting a budget or creating a growth plan that other organizations like CSED can help you with. So I think that, yeah, I mean, organizations that are thinking seriously about attracting investment to grow a social enterprise need an independently produced or independently consulted business plan. And they might look at the upfront cost for that and say, like, well, that's prohibitive, I can't do that, I'll just make this thing myself. But think about, like, 4 months, 8 months down the road, you're going to want some grant funding or a private investor or a donor to help you fund your startup costs. If you bring them an idea, they might say yes if it's a good idea, but not everybody will. You improve your chances considerably if you bring them a well thought out, independently sourced business plan where you say, like, look, this is my idea, and this is what, I don't know, C said or whomever else said about it. And so that it increases confidence for sure to attract some of those types of investments
Mm-hmm.
to start new things. And so, yeah, I think that we've had a lot of success with that process over the years, and it has successfully started and launched new things as a result. So that's kind of what I say to people who ask, for sure.
Okay. What can you share with us in terms of what's coming down the pipe? What opportunities are you thinking about as we go forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, like I said, the for me, what's top of mind is channeling the energies of our youth into opportunities for them to start careers
Mm.
that may or may not be the same career 10 years from now, but hopefully will still exist in more or less their current shape. We need to start businesses, we being Operation Come Home, need to start social enterprises, businesses um, that are accessible for people who don't have post-secondary education to start in. I mean, post-secondary of any kind is an asset, but the youth that we work with, some of them are still completing high school when they start working for us, and so we need to be in industries and sectors where frontline staff, entry level staff do not need post secondary to be successful. But maybe there's an avenue for that down the road. Like, for example, if somebody really enjoys working in Foodworks and they're supporting Dana and they're learning about culinary world, very a large number of our youth go off to Algonquin College to study in the culinary program out of Foodworks. So there's a roadmap there. But at the outset, yeah, we want to create enterprises that are in those kinds of spaces. Obviously, trades and hands-on related fields are important, but that's not all there is to it. I'm really interested in this idea of high-end excellence in customer service and the types of promise that can hold for some of our young people who, I mean, a lot of the youth that we work with, they're street kids, but they are right on the zeitgeist of culture, and they are with it in ways that I am not.
Mm.
And so I think that's a resource. They know what's interesting, what's cool, what's compelling. They have such a creative, not all of our youth, mind you, but I see so many of them have so much potential for creativity and expression and creative fields,
Mhm.
that there must be some kind of union there. So I still there's an idea germinating about something in that space, but I think that that's probably I could see scenarios in the future where we start other retail offerings, maybe online stores that create apparel or that sort of thing. I mean, of course, many social enterprises have been down that road before. So it's like trying to find a space or a
Mhm.
niche where our next opportunity lies. Our youth are already asking for it. They're my primary source of inspiration. They want to create T-shirts. They want to promote the bands they like. They want to be involved in those kinds of sectors. So it's hitting on a model where we can get there. Yeah. So
Mhm.
that's potentially what's next.
Well, I think that all of Ottawa is going to be looking to Operation Come Home with excitement to see what comes next, and certainly I think also to just simply be excited about the current offerings. And so we're delighted that you could be with us. Is there anything? Is there anything that you would, I guess, in terms of closing, anything that you would share with our listeners, our viewers, in terms of just advice for them if they happen to be either a social entrepreneur or maybe they work within a charity or nonprofit? Any advice to them in terms of final thoughts around their journey in terms of considering social enterprise?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the one thing that I always try to tell myself, and this might just be advice that I have to give myself, is to be patient. Remember, a long time ago when I was working at a university, um, we would have the branding conversation where it's like the university I was working for had this brand. It wanted the market to know. It wanted to know everybody know what it's all about. We had a consultant come in who kind of changed my thinking on a lot of it because, like, after year 3 or year 4 of that sustained marketing exercise that we were all engaged in, we're all tired of it. And the staff internally at the university are talking about changing the brand strategy and pivoting to something else. And oh, do we not need to freshen this up? And the usual conversations. And the consultant that we had at the time came in and said, like, no, you're tired of it. People now are only starting to get it. You've got another couple of years before you can even think about a brand change because it's working. As soon as your people that you talk to are starting to repeat your brand back to you, you've just started. Like, they said, don't change gears, don't fuss with what's working, you know, but be sustained and consistent. And I think that that's also part of it. Is that sometimes you know organizations need to be aware of those signals, right? Just because your internal perspective is, oh, this is old news, we've been doing this forever. Keep an eye out for what's going on outside of your organization because it might be the case that your audience, your market, your people are only starting to really get it when you've been saying it for so many years you're tired of it. So it's that is to, because I think, yeah, anybody can talk about starting new ideas and launching things and how to do that and whatever. That's the easy part. But it's like being sustained about it. That's where the rubber hits the road, where you can achieve some real impact.
Hmm. Well, John, you've been at it 2007, 2008, multiple social enterprises and experimentations over time. And I think what you've been able to do in terms of serving youth, at-risk youth, the city is excited about what's coming, and we wish you every success, and we look to the future in terms of what you're going to be doing next.
Yeah. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. This is Michael Murr with CSED. I'd like to thank the City of Ottawa for its financial support of our podcast series.